Hi, this is Pastor Tim, and I want to welcome you to day 2 of this 5-day devotional called Do Not Lose Your Heart. Sometimes life just seems to give us more than we can handle. I like the story of a mailman. This mailman said, I was making my daily rounds when a 4-year-old boy ran to his family's mailbox and planted himself squarely in front of it. With his feet and his arms spread wide, he told me sternly, Mom says she just can't take any more bills. Life can sometimes get overwhelming. There's relationship problems, there's financial stress, and there's deteriorating health. 2 Corinthians 4:16 tells us the stark reality. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Sometimes we're more aware of that outward part wasting away than we are the inner being renewed day by day. One helpful thing about growing old is it helps you realize the reality that the outward appearance is wasting away. You look into the mirror and realize there's no miracle cream good enough, there's no exercise program or diet that's going to reverse the aging process. And although we may be losing our youthful looks and energy, it will be helpful to look at someone who actually lost everything. If you're familiar with the story of Job, he learned how to trust God when you've lost everything. Job lost his children, his wealth, his health, his friends, and his reputation. Listen to some of his complaints. Yet if I speak, my pain is not relieved. And if I refrain, it does not go away. Surely, O God, you have worn me out. You have devastated my entire household. God assails me and tears me in his anger and gnashes his teeth at me. My opponent fastens on me his piercing eyes. Men open their mouths to jeer at me. They strike my cheek in scorn and unite together against me. God has turned me over to evil men and thrown me into the clutches of the wicked. All was well with me, but he shattered me. He seized me by the neck and crushed me. He made me his target. My spirit is broken. My days are cut short. The grave awaits me. God has made me a byword to everyone, a man in whose face people spit. Now, he had other complaints as well, but despite all of these, Job never lost his faith in God. Look what he says in Job 13 and 19. Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. I know that my Redeemer lives and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. Job did not lose heart, even though he suffered greatly. And the Bible holds him up as an amazing example of someone who continued to trust in God during the most difficult circumstances. I read a story in Don Baker's book called Pain's Hidden Purpose, and there he says there was a woman named Martha whose son Jimmy had died. Her aunt visited shortly after Jimmy's death, and and listened to the wise until she found an appropriate moment. Then she said something very wise. She said, "It might help you if you changed the spelling of that word. Try spelling it with an O instead of a Y. Change the word from why to who." That's what God does in his speech to Job. Job didn't need to know why these things happened as they did. He just needed to know who was responsible and who was in control. He just needed to know God. And when he said in chapter 42, verse 2, "I know that you can do all things. No plan of yours can be thwarted." He was finally changing his why to who. He was finally letting God be God in his life. We can have that same confidence that God is working in our life and his plans for us cannot be thwarted. 2 Corinthians 4 says, "Our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." So what do? We fix our eyes not on what is seen. What is seen can sometimes be depressing, but we fix our eyes on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. We have that hope. It's a living hope because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. A pastor whose son committed suicide, he stood up to preach only 10 days later, and the text he chose was Romans 8:28. About we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And after reading the verse aloud, he was obviously having trouble continuing. And he said, "I cannot make my son's suicide fit into this passage. It's impossible for me to see how anything good could come out of it. Yet I realize that I only see in part. I only know in part. It's like the miracle of the shipyard. Almost every part of our great ocean-going vessels are made of steel. If you take any single part, be it a steel plate out of the hull or the huge rudder, and you throw it into the ocean, it will sink. Steel does not float." But when the shipbuilders are finished, when the last plate has been riveted in place, then that massive steel ship is virtually unsinkable. And then he continued, "Taken by itself, my son's suicide is senseless. Throw it into the sea of Romans 8:28 and it sinks. Still, I believe that when the eternal shipbuilder has finally finished, when God has worked out his perfect design, even this senseless tragedy will somehow work to our eternal good." This means we cannot judge the goodness of God's work until his program is finished. Well, thank you for joining me for day 2 of this devotional, and I hope and pray that this has been helpful for you, encouraging, and I encourage you to think about one thing you've learned and put it in the comment section below. Thank you again for joining me. God bless you.